புளிப்பழம் தோலில் பிரிந்திருத்தல் போல அழிச்சூழ் மறையிலை ஓய் அப்புத்துளிப்போல் புளிப்பழம் தோலில் பிரிந்திருத்தல் போல அழிச்சூழ் மறையிலை ஓய் அப்புத்துளிப்போல் இழிவுடல் இங்கு இணைக்காது இழிவுடல் இங்கிணைக்காது ஈடேற இழிவுடல் இங்கிணைக்காது ஈடேறற்கு தெளிவு நீ தேற்றிடையா இழிவுடல் இங்கு இணைக்காது ஈடேற எற்கு தெளிவு நீ தேற்றிடையா தெளிவு நீ தேற்றிடையா ஐயா.
Ripe tamarind fruit from the shell separate inside, like raindrops that from the leaf of a bee-beset lotus slide. Let me separate from this worthless body, here abide. O Lord, for my salvation, grant me this clarity of mind.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana. So we'll start today with the 31st discipline, or Neṟi. Anand, please go ahead.
தமக்குரிய திறமைகள் எத்தகையவாயினும் சாதுக்கள் அவற்றை சிறிதும் பிரகடனம் பண்ணலாகாது. பண்ணில் அவர்கள் பிராணபதமான சாதனத்துக்கு கடைசி வரை பெரிதும் பிரதிபந்தகமாகும். I'll read it again. தமக்குரிய திறமைகள் எத்தகையவாயினும் சாதுக்கள் அவற்றை சிறிதும் பிரகடனம் பண்ணலாகாது. பண்ணில் அவர்கள் பிராணபதமான சாதனத்துக்கு கடைசி வரை பெரிதும் பிரதிபந்தகமாகும்.
Robert, please.
Whatever abilities they may possess, sādhakas should not flaunt them in the least degree. If they do so, it will remain to the very end a great obstacle to their sādhana, their most important endeavour to attain the refuge for their soul.
So, with regards to this Neṟi, Robert brought to my attention a verse from Sri Sadhu's Ramanasramam, which is the book of prayers. And here is the translation of it. Go ahead, Robert.
Grant me the glorious and humble state wherein I never for a moment puff with pride think I am a noble one, in tapas highly qualified, forgetting that my life entirely resides in the aid and succor granted by your grace.
What are your thoughts, Robert?
Well, it's basically telling us that really the only way we can avoid that the kind of excess in which we believe that all these achievements that we have are our own achievements, rather than those of the self, the being of which we are merely a reflection, then the only real way we can do that is to turn inwards. And here, Sadhguru is saying, we turn inwards to Bhagavan, which is our own being, and we accord to that being all the credit for what we do. We can't decide on our own behalf, oh yes, I think I'm quite good at that, I'm quite good at that. I'm not. Basically, we give up all attachment to the fruits of the things we do. That way we will never fall into the trap of flaunting our own achievements and so on.
Right. That's very important, right? I mean, so they may have, like, whether it is worldly skills or in our spiritual pursuit, both ways we shouldn't think, we have such a talent and sort of feel that pride. And then here he's talking about in the spiritual angle, particularly. And this is very important. And in elsewhere, I think there's a Guru Ashokavai verse which deals with this also. The pride, it's a very one of the strongest to let go. So we have to try our best not to get any such pride, that we are with, even with that, that we are the best guru or and so forth. But we should just practice ourselves, as Robert said, and just focus on our practice, surrendering to Guru and following his teachings.
I think, in each of our achievements, we do something that we've been trying to do for a long time. We suddenly get this rush of self-worth. At that point, you can feel that arising, and as soon as it arises, just turn it back to the self.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. Bhagavan said that even for a jnani, the ego, like a burnt rope, arises, but it has no power to hold. So, and it's the same for all of us. When we get that feeling of, yes, I've just written this great verse, or I've just done some charity, the feeling arises, but as soon as it arises, we can turn it inward and offer it up to the self, and it's gone. With no more attachment to it then. We don't carry on saying, well, I'll write a better verse next week, or I'll give more charity, or I'll do this. No, each time we get this feeling, turn it back, offer it up to the self, and it's clear we can carry on.
Exactly. Thank you, Robert. So, are there any questions on this, Neṟi? If not, we'll go to the next one, which is 32.
Hold on for a minute, Kumar.
Yeah, sure.
It's not. Yeah, here's a question. Just Robert said that was great when we have that feeling of, after doing charity, just turn it back. And I'm thinking that the opposite, where we're not, or we're lacking in that, we can turn that lacking back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where there's like some self-deprecation or something.
Oh, exactly. That works exactly the same way.
All right. Thank you.
In fact, that's probably more important in that way, because it's the self-deprecating feelings which make us give up on what we're doing. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. either way, it has to be turned back, because it's an unreal, it's not a reality. It's just a thought which has arisen, which has no power if we don't give it power. So whether it's for, whether it's for, in the way you said, negatively or positively, yeah, it's exactly the same process in my opinion, in my experience.
Right. Thank you. That's a good point. So we will go to Neṟi 32. Anand, please.
பெண்டிர் முதலாயினோர் பிரணவ ஜபம் பண்ணலாகாது என்பது ஆன்மாவை ஒருவன் அனுசந்தானம் பண்ணலாகாதென தடுத்தார் போல்வதே யாம். பெண்டிர் முதலாயினோர் பிரணவ ஜபம் பண்ணலாகாது என்பது ஆன்மாவை ஒருவன் அனுசந்தானம் பண்ணலாகாதென தடுத்தார் போல்வதே யாம்.
Robert, please.
To maintain that women and others should not repeat the holy syllable Om, or Pranava Japa, is like prohibiting someone from contemplating the self.
Yeah. So, over the years, throughout the world, female rights has been an issue, and including the spiritual pursuit, and it's getting better and better with every passing day. And this is one thing Bhagavan wanted to make it clear, and Muruganar is stressing that fact. A couple of quotes from Ramana Gita, which was recorded by Ganapati Muni, came to my mind and I shared with Robert, so we will go through those here. On August 21st, 1917, a devotee asked Bhagavan, does the Shastras sanction women renouncing their home and becoming ascetics? To which Bhagavan replied,
since there is no such prohibition in the Shastra, there is nothing wrong in women abiding in the self and fully right with becoming ascetics.
Right. So yes, Bhagavan is very clear. So there's nothing wrong in women abiding in the self and trying their best to achieve self-realization. On the same day, there was another question, probably from the same devotee. If a woman liberated while alive happens to shed her body, what is the proper thing to do? Cremation or burial? And the reason or the background behind this question is the general custom in India is to cremate the body after life passes away. And that's the general rule. However, for jnanis, they're always buried. So and that, that's why Bhagavan was buried, and so was his mother, and so was Muruganar, and so forth.
The cow.
What is that?
And Lakshmi the cow.
Lakshmi the cow, right? And Swami Sadhavam. So now let's look at how Bhagavan responded to this question. Go ahead, Robert, please.
As in Mukti and Jnana, there is no difference between a man and woman. The body of a woman liberated during life is not to be cremated, for it is a temple. Whatever evils are said to follow the cremation of the body of a man liberated during life will follow when the body of a woman liberated during life is cremated. I said at the time, didn't I, Kumar, it's interesting that this idea of the body of a jnani being a temple, because the jnani no longer experiences a body, the jnani experiences the self only. Therefore, it would be quite improper to treat it just as a dead body, because it didn't have the status of a body while in life, so it should not be treated like one. It's all part of the self. Anyway, that's a side issue, but it struck me as interesting that Bhagavan referred to the body of a jnani specifically as a temple,
Right.
no less, as it were.
So that's why, you know, Ramanasramam is sacred because it contains the body of Bhagavan. He's always there. He never really left us.
Yes.
He's always with us. Any questions on this, Neṟi?
Yeah, having been brought up in, you know, compared to all of you, I am probably the oldest here. So it has been a source of perennial sorrow for many people like me to have seen so many women being mistreated in so many ways. You know, like previously we saw the, you know, preventing them from chanting Om. And then, of course, you know what happens when a woman loses her husband and so on. So among those, you know, at least one would think that when a woman like Avudaya Karl is one example, gets liberated, you know, with self-realization, and everybody knows that that has happened. Yeah, obviously, I mean, she should be given the same rights. And it's not giving her any, you know, doing any favor to the women. We are uplifting ourselves, and then, you know, we are worshipping God in that form of burying the woman and raising a temple on that burial ground. So my thoughts run back to the olden days, you know, injustice, which even today, unfortunately, persists in India, for example. And I don't know, I mean, among other countries, how they treat, but in India, still there are several prohibitions for women as to what to do and what not to do. Vedas, for example, cannot be chanted by women.
Hopefully it all gets better, you know.
Yeah, like you said.
Hopefully they look at this particular Neṟi more and more. This message spreads more and more, and people change their views. Because in the state of jnana, there is no difference between man and a woman. Bhagavan is very clear there. There's no difference between man and woman. So thank you. Rabbi, please go ahead.
So I understand the intent of the last paragraph, that there's no difference between man and women once liberated, or even before liberation, as to what they can or cannot do in terms of spiritual aspiration. But there is a suggestion here that evils are said to follow the cremation of the body of man or woman liberated during life. What is the evil, and who is to determine a person who is realized or not? And on whom should these evils fall?
That's a challenging question for us. You know, it's always difficult to be sure, but I mean that it depends on the devotees around and for them to make that decision. You know, to make that call.
Actually, if you look at the syntax, it says whatever evils are said to follow. It may be said that no evils follow, but if evils are said to follow, then the same would apply to a man as a woman. It is not saying that evils will follow, and it's not saying what evils will follow. It's saying that if evils are said to follow, they may not be, then they will equally follow a man and a woman. That's all it means.
Thanks, Robert. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's just a syntax, really.
But
yeah, I'm a new one to this.
No doubt, Bhagavan, living in India in the early part of the 20th century, will have heard people saying, "Oh, you know, this and that." Although some Shastra says this and that will happen if you accidentally cremate the body of a jnani. So no doubt there are some Shastra that says something about it. But that's not his point, is it? His point is merely to say that if evils are to follow this thing, then you know, the same for a man as for a woman. I think
so
that's
Abhi is also asking, who is to decide? So what is your thoughts on that, Robert?
Who is to decide?
What evils?
Who is to decide as to how, whether a man or woman is liberated during his or her lifetime?
Yeah. That's a tough question, isn't it?
I don't see.
I think, can I comment here? I think it's an answer to the people who criticized, saying by burying they'll go to hell or something.
Yes,
It's an answer to that question, saying that if you think a liberated man, when he is cremated, will go to hell, liberated woman also will go to hell. Okay, I think it's an answer to somebody who is not understanding. That's my understanding of this. But I do have a fundamental question here. Can I ask?
Sure,
Yes.
go ahead, please.
My question is that if we believe that body is not that important, everything is soul, and we have to deal with soul in life, when we live, the body is not important. When we die, why the body should be important? Whether we bury or cremate or donate to some medical thing, how does it matter?
Right. So I think that is why. So actually, I think we're focusing on the slide that we shouldn't be focusing too much on. This is only meant to stress the previous slide. So that is very important. The previous slide is what it's trying to say is that there's no prohibition whatsoever for a woman in her pursuit of self-realization. What this slide shows is a follow-up question. All it does is it stresses the importance of a female jnani, that they're on par in all ways with a male, whether it is before becoming jnani or after becoming jnani. And I think we should just end it right there, because the message is that females, there should be no inhibition whatsoever, no prohibition whatsoever in the pursuit of self-realization. Does that make sense?
Exactly. If we if we stay in the self, then the self will decide what happens to all the bodies everywhere. We'd have to worry about that. But as Kumar was saying, the main point of this is to stress it. So back to the previous slide.
Right. This is just this slide is just to show the importance of equality, rather than the subtleties of it in itself. Does that reasonably answer the question, Venkatasubramanian?
Yes, Ji.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to the next Neṟi, 33. Please go ahead, Anand.
Okay. Adi Arinyalar Arave Kadiyatakada Alavukku Minjinal Amudamum Nanjam. Repeating. Adi Arinyaral Arave Kadiyatakada Alavukku Minjinal Amudamum Nanjam.
Robert, please.
Excess should be altogether avoided by the wise. Even ambrosia taken to excess is a poison.
So, this is the practical advice. Again, the whole of these Neṟis, it is interspersed with a lot of these practical advices. That's one of the reasons we even took to discussing this. So let's look at the message of Muruganar here. Let's just start with the quote from Sage Tirumula, which stresses this point beautifully. Anand, you want to read the Tamil, please, just once?
நடுவு நின்றார்க்கு அன்றி ஞானமும் இல்லை, நடுவு நின்றார்க்கு நரகமும் இல்லை, நடுவு நின்றார் நல்ல தேவரும் ஆவர், நடுவு நின்றார் வழி நானும் நின்றேனே.
Yeah. Robert, please go ahead.
True knowledge only comes to those who tread the middle path. They shall not to hell go, those who tread the middle path. As true devas they'll be known, those who tread the middle path. On the same path shall I go, as those who tread the middle path.
just to stress the key points. So this true knowledge only comes to those who tread the middle path. They shall not to hell go, those who tread the middle path. And then he goes on to conclude, on the same path shall I go, as those who tread the middle path. So, so what is this middle path? That is, it's a more an art and clearly defined.
There are different levels to it, Kumar.
What is that? Sorry?
There are different levels. On the first level, like in the Western world, we have philosophies like Aristotle's golden mean, which says if we do anything to excess, we will fall from virtue.
Right.
But that doesn't take us very far. We'll see later on when we come to the neṟis.
Yeah.
What is the middle path? How can we find the middle path? We can't just by saying, oh, I'll do less of that or more of that, or I'll get less angry and not be so nice or not try to be so. These are all mental strategies. So as far as I can see, the only middle path is the path of the self, which takes us away from excess in any direction whatsoever.
Right.
But there are many theories. I don't know exactly what Sri Muruganar was thinking of. I think he must have been thinking of the path of detachment, renunciation, and the virtuous circle of the more you dwell in the self, the less you get attached to outer things, the less you get to outer things, the less you prefer one thing against another, and so on. But if anybody's got any thoughts on the Nada Nilai in Tamil, I'll be interested to hear it.
I think, yeah, I think you did the literal translation of middle path, but it's more, there's more to it than that, right? I mean, it's
I think he's mean.
So let's look at that. If you were actually the rest of the discussion today is a sort of all the continuity of this, and we'll just look at it from different dimensions here.
It's a good dimension to look at.
Yeah, so this is Krishna's, Sri Krishna's take on it. It occurs in Bhagavad Gita Saram, verse what? It occurs in Bhagavad Gita Saram, verse 37. Please go ahead and read this, Robert.
The same in honor, ignominy too, the same to friend and foe, abandoning all undertakings, he is said to have gone quite beyond all the three qualities. Three qualities are the three gunas, of course, sattva, tamas, and
right. So here Krishna is advising the same in honor and ignominy, the same to friend and foe, and abandoning all undertakings. So he's in a subtle way, he's emphasizing those points. But you could really get to that state only when you're self-realized. But so it's sort of a it's something to keep in mind. And as we practice more and more Atma Vichara intuitively, the better and better we're able to walk in the middle, sort of. But it's sort of a metaphorical statement rather than it's what it really means. It's a balanced approach. So now let's look at these next two neṟis. We'll take it together, and that sort of illustrates that even further. And then please.
Udasina varkaye uttama varkai. Patra padaipara nadagam pola vignyalathu nada. Want to repeat again?
Yeah, go ahead.
34 is Udasina varkaye uttama varkai. Patra padaipara nadagam pola vignyalathu nada.
Thank you. Robert?
Life lived in detachment is the noblest life. Conduct yourself in this world as if in a drama, without attachment, without agitation. The reason these go so well together is that the first one implies that we should go and live in a cave and not be involved with life, but the second one gives the opposite view, that we should remain in the world, but we should remain in it without attachment. like actors in a drama. So these two go very well together in that sense.
Yeah, and this is as I said, it's very important because it deals with how we conduct ourselves, right? And one of the best examples that always comes to my mind is the story of King Janaka that occurs in Yoga Vashistha. And we discussed this recently Tuesday in one of our satsangs. Bringing those key points here, and we discussed this with Robert. And before we get to the Yoga Vashistha story or the quotes, let's just look at Sri Krishna's message again on chapter 18, verse 11. Robert, you want to read that, please?
It is indeed impossible for an embodied being to renounce action entirely.
Sorry, it just keeps moving automatically. Go ahead.
But he who renounces the fruit of action is regarded as the one who has renounced. And that's what Bhagavan always said, to the school teacher that wanted to go to the forest. If you stay dwelling in the self, none of your actions, none of the fruits of any of your actions will accrue to you.
Yeah. So here he really defined, a lot of us are confused, right? I mean, what does renouncing mean? And first Krishna starts by acknowledging it is difficult for an embodied being to renounce action entirely. So what that really means is renouncing the fruit of action is what is considered as real renouncing, or one who renounces the fruit of action is regarded as one who has renounced. So now there's more clarity being added to this message. Let's look at another dimension here from Yoga Vashistha. So the story is a very long story, but just to summarize in 2-3 sentences, King Janak, a very holy person, spiritually ripe, one day was walking in the forest, and upon hearing the words of a few sages in the forest, they are chanting pure Advaitic statements. So he returns back to his palace, sits in contemplation, loses all motivation for worldly duties, at which point his bodyguard asks him to come back and resume the duties, but he continues to be in contemplation. So let's read his thoughts on this. I do not long for what I do not have, nor do I desire to abandon what has come to me unsought. I am firmly established in the self. Let what is mine be mine. There is nothing that I should work for, nor is there any meaning in inaction. Whatever is gained by action or inaction is false. Well, this is very important. So when Krishna or Vashistha or the sages say inaction, they don't mean completely avoiding all action. So here he comes to that realization here. There is nothing that I should work for, nor is there any meaning in inaction. And then he goes on, when the mind is thus established in desirelessness, when it does not seek pleasure, when the body and its limbs perform their natural functions, action and inaction are of equal value or meaning. So I'll read it again. When the mind is thus established in desirelessness, meaning there is a lack of desire for the fruits of action, and when it does not seek pleasure, when the body and its limbs perform their natural functions, then action and inaction are of equal value. So he goes on to say, these are all Janak's thoughts. Hence, let the body engage itself in its natural functions. Without such activity, the body will disintegrate. when the mind ceases to entertain the notions, I do this, I enjoy this, in regard to the actions thus performed, then action becomes non-action. So here is a definition of non-action that the word keeps coming up in Gita and other scriptures, right? So what does that really mean is not avoiding action in itself, but not having the sense of I do this, I am performing this, and so forth. So when the mind ceases to entertain the notions, I do this, I enjoy this, in regard to the actions thus performed, then action becomes non-action. So finally, Sage Vasistha is actually recollecting the story, right, to Lord Ram. And so he summarizes, or he gives his take on it. So narrating this even to Lord Rama, Sage Vasistha said, reflecting this, King Janaka rose from his seat as the sun rises in the horizon and began to engage himself in the royal duties without any attachment to them. Having abandoned all concepts of the desirable and the undesirable, freed from all psychological conditionings and intention, he engaged himself in spontaneous and appropriate action, as if in deep sleep, though wide awake. He performed the day's tasks, and at the conclusion of the day, he retired to his own seclusion to spend the night in deep meditation, which was now easy and natural to him. So, with that, I'll see if there are any questions or comments on this. Go ahead, Ravi.
As a householder, we are often in a position to take some decisions, right? And we struggle with it. And but how is this detachment going to lead us to better decisions and more equitable decisions? How is the equanimity or lack of attachment improve such decisions?
Yes, well, if you do not let go of your sense of being, that you actually exist while you're making your decisions, you will not see that when you speak from a place of truth, because once you are just the I am and you're not the I am something, you are the self in that moment. And you will make the right decision because you are the self. And you know that because you can say, I am not something. No, my wife doesn't say Jan, I don't say Rob, we all say I. Why do we say I? Because there is only one I. And if you are that I, you can't make a wrong decision because the self does not make decisions. It certainly doesn't make mistakes. It doesn't make decisions at all. So you have to learn that from experience by turning inward. No one can give you a reason or explain why you make better decisions, but you will. But you have to practice it.
Yeah, I think that's difficult to have confidence into.
Yes.
In whatever arises, that is the best decision, and without involvement of the egoic self, to let the pure decision emerge, or from a place of truth, as you articulate.
Well, it's like at the beginning we said about the tamarind, until it's ripe, it won't separate from the pod. I'm 74 years old. It took me 50 years to get where I am. So, what you going to do? You know it's there. You know inside. You know the truth. All you've got to do is follow it. Follow Bhagavan.
Yeah, I think one
hard as it may be. In a way, it's not hard because even the smallest victories can give massive joy, whereas the largest gain in the outer world gives like ever exponentially decreasing pleasure or displeasure, as it were. I don't know what more I can say.
Right. So I think one point, the key point you mentioned, or at least what that struck me, is the word experience. So the more and more we practice self-attention, this thing is the walking in the middle path, walking with detachment comes out naturally.
Except in a way, it's not experience. It's the experience of the moment of non-experience.
The experience also is gone, right? So it automatically follows.
Yeah, it's not being and it's not non-being. It's beyond both. And it informs, well, it is everything.
Right.
But you can only, we have to say experience, but it's not an experience. It's a realization. Well, there's no word for it. You listen to Michael. He tries every week to find words for it.
Right.
So as we all do.
Yeah. So
But we never will. We never will.
Go ahead. Final comment from Yazan, and then we'll go to the next section.
This whole discussion about attachment and how it affects our ability to engage in life, and whether we can do better without attachment. I remember hearing a talk not that long ago, and there was this really great metaphor, the one that we know very, very well about, the movie screen. But the point was that kind of, the screen is not attached to what happens on it, right? Like the screen is there. It does not say, well, I'm attached to this character, the hero of the movie. I really want to stick, hold on to him. Because if that character is attached to the screen, then the rest of the movie does not play well, right? Oh, the villain's going to come on. I don't like that character. I'm not going to let him come on the screen. The movie can't play. When the movie is not playing, the screen is not saying, when's the movie going to play? When the movie is playing, the screen's not saying, when's the movie going to end? The screen is completely detached from any of the characters or anything happening from the movie. And that way it's perfect, because that way it's the perfect medium for, the movie to play on. So kind of in the same way, if we're attached to things in life, we're not attached, you always do things better kind of in a way when you're not attached. I mean, we know this instinctively. I think it comes, like you guys, like Robert said, from experience, but it's just kind of, it's putting it in the bigger context of how our attachments, affect the way we live our life. I think, there's been some very good commentary on this. So thank you for the discussion.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm just going to say that one way to look at it, if we think back to when we were 5, 15, 20, 30, 40, the screen on which our experiences played out, whether it was looking for your toy car or playing in a sandpit or getting a PhD, that screen hasn't changed for any of us. Can anybody say that the screen on which their life has played out over the last 5 to 70 years has changed any whit whatsoever? So it's that screen we're looking for. We're not going to worry about stubbing our toe in the sandpit now, are we? Because that's 75 years ago.
Right. Good. So thank you.
So why would we worry if we flunked the PhD?
Right.
It's not real. It really isn't real, ultimately.
Right. So let me see here. There is, did you have a comment, Anand? So, because I'm trying to close the session.
Quick one.
Yeah.
The whole, you did mention about Gita, particularly second chapter. The whole of second chapter is devoted to this neutrality, both externally, even heat and cold, like Shitoshna Samadukkeshu. So happiness and sorrow. So how Jnani, which is there, he is called a Sthita Prajna, one who has this mind in the middle, always unmoving. So the Sthita Prajna's qualities are exactly what is being, what are being described here. So
exactly, right. Sthita Prajna, right. Thank you. Thank you all, and with that, we will take